Hey there, welcome to part 2 of this episode, where I discuss each game in the Battle Network series in more detail. The first Battle Network game was released in 2001 and was pretty well received for its time. The game kicks off the series and pretty much serves as a warm-up for the other games. It explains Land's first fight against World 3 and introduces the main characters in a light and perhaps silly story. It starts off the series pretty well, but it's probably the weakest of the 6. The problem is that it almost looks like a beta or an experiment before the other 5 games. Although it's fun and it doesn't feel like the black sheep of the series, it's just really short, too easy, and just not that impressive. Maybe I'm spoiled by playing the other 5 games, but this one had some issues that are understandable since it is the first game in the series. Battles are incredibly easy because the game automatically regenerates your health after each battle, an aspect which was dropped in the sequels. There are also only 3 main areas to explore: your town, a government building, and a city where the scenery is basically recycled, meaning that there isn't much to see or do. However, there aren't any fetch quests, which may explain why the game feels so short, but it just doesn't feel like too much effort was put into this game. The puzzles were actually pretty good, except for, as I mentioned, Elec Man's stage. You know, I didn't care for Elec Man in the original Mega Man series, but at least he had Journey. A second Battle Network game was released soon after the first, and improved on the original like a good sequel should. It introduced a new mechanic called a style change, where over the course of the game, Mega Man would get a certain type of power depending on certain factors. This itself made battles deeper, and everything a lot more interesting. The game follows Lan and Mega Man's battle against a new organization known as Gospel. The game also includes a lot of small but necessary changes from the first, like more areas to explore. However, I have to say, this game isn't that memorable overall. Well, except for that part where you fought a bear, because it was very exciting. Okay, you know what? Fine. If you won't laugh, then here. Oh, laugh track. You're the only one who gets me. The third Battle Network game is probably my favorite in the series. It details the battle against a resurrected World 3, and features a more detailed and interesting customization system. Up to this point in the series, Mega Man could be powered up by finding, well, power-ups, and they were simply applied to his stats. However, the third game shook things up with a customization system. Now, to people who haven't played this game, it looks like Tetris. It's really not as complicated as it looks. Basically, you can install programs that power up Mega Man as long as you follow certain rules. And whatever combination of powers you can fit into the grid without breaking any rules would power Mega Man up accordingly. Incorrectly programming Mega Man would lead to, well, undesirable effects. The game actually had a pretty good story as well, as it was much darker and more compelling than its predecessors. And it also had a lot more areas to explore, a longer quest, and was undoubtedly the best of the first 3 games. Battle Network 4 was probably the biggest change to the series. First of all, the graphics are much different, as characters are smaller, perhaps cleaner, and Mega Man doesn't look like a freak in the text boxes. The entire layout of AC/DC Town changed around, and I love how no character even acknowledges this. The story in this game centers around stopping a giant meteor from hitting the planet. Oh man, let's see. Which joke? Oh, okay. I can't go wrong here.
Alright, this is it, people. Can we do this?
Yeah!
Are you with me?
Yeah! USA! 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 USA!
The villain of the game isn't Dr. Wily. It's an evil dude named Dr. Rigo. And seriously, you should be able to tell he's a villain right off the bat, because he's in a position of power and he's wearing a monocle. Seriously, if you have poor eyesight and you're in Japanese media, then there's a good chance you're an evil prick. This was definitely the biggest game in the series as well, as you got to explore a huge theme park, and different countries too, like Netfrika. Get it? The gimmick of this game was that you fought in 3 huge tournaments, and here is where Capcom truly mastered the art of artificial lengthening. Anyway, another interesting twist to the series is that you no longer have style changes. Over the course of the game, you encounter a few Navis that resonate in your soul, and Mega Man copies their powers and kicks some ass for a couple of turns. I have to say that I prefer style changes over this because at least with style changes, there's a lot more variety. Sure, the storyline is basically a B-movie and the finale was kinda cliche, but as a kid, it was really epic, and even if you're not a kid, it's still entertaining. Mega Man Battle Network 5 was a pretty good addition to the series, but I have to mention one thing off the bat that pisses me off. The game comes in two versions, which is already annoying enough, but more on that later. The versions are Team Proto Man and Team Colonel. However, Team Colonel features characters and story elements in the final game that aren't mentioned in Team Proto Man, so if you were like me and you only played Team Proto Man, then Battle Network 6 would have a bunch of things that didn't make sense. Like, when did Chief from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest get into my series? Anyway, aside from that, this was another solid entry, which focused on Mega Man joining either Team Proto Man or Colonel, and fighting against Dr. Regal, with a team of Navis who are all playable. The main gimmick of this game was that you did something called a Liberation Mission, which is basically like Final Fantasy Tactics. And you battle and you try to fight and beat the boss as quickly as possible while utilizing the various abilities of your teammates. This feature was actually pretty damn fun, as it was a good challenge and offered some replay value as well. It wasn't groundbreaking or game changing, but it made the game feel more unique from the others, as well as added the ability to play as other Navis. The story in the game was also alright, because it wasn't too memorable and there were some annoying plot holes, like right here. Sir, we gassed the room, but we can't find Lan. The only person who's probably nearby because his friends and his father are here, and he has saved the world on 4 separate occasions, making him the only possible threat to our success. I suggest checking that side of the room. And cut into my orphanage burning in Jersey Shore time? Oh, I don't think so. Let's peace easy, my bros. The 6th and final Battle Network game was a pretty good finale to the series, in my opinion one of the best along with 3 and 4. The game put Lan and Mega Man out of their element as they're both transferred to a new school and have to try to keep in contact with older friends, which is a relatable issue. The game features one final battle against World 3 and closes out the series with a pretty good storyline and a nice little epilogue. However, despite being a solid end to the series, it did have a lot of little issues. The main feature of this game was the ability to turn into a monster and become incredibly powerful for a set amount of turns. This was really interesting because if you ran out of time with that power, Mega Man would become extremely weak, so you either have to time it right or use it as a last resort. The game introduced more characters that are completely unmemorable, but the battle system is just a little too much of the same this time around overall, I have to say. They're just going through the motions, that's what this game felt like. Every game before added something significant, but this game was more a perfecter of the series. But this was all tired if you've played the Battle Network games in order already. It was finally time to put the series to rest, and Battle Network 6 was a good way to do it. Well, that's the Battle Network series, but before I close this off, I want to give my final defense for the Battle Network series. As the Happy Video Game Nerd mentioned, Mega Man fans have received a lot.
But I've never seen this type on Earth.
Lot of abuse since the masterpiece that was Mega Man X. Well, this has understandably turned a lot of fans angry, and a lot of them direct their anger towards the Battle Network series as an example of Capcom raping their franchises and not giving Mega Man fans more of what they want. This series has received a lot of criticism from longtime Mega Man fans and critics alike, especially the spin-off series, Mega Man Star Force, but that's really for another time. In 2001, the first Battle Network game was released on the Game Boy Advance. We can assume that many die-hard NES Mega Man fans were young adults by then, and so they could write off this series as bad automatically. Well, just look at it, it looks pretty silly and kiddish. And no side-scrolling? Well, forget it then. And to a degree, people are right. Kenji Inafune, the genius behind Megaman, actually said that this game was intended for a younger audience. And a Mega Man RPG did sound really strange. I mean, at least Mega Man Legends had platforming and dancing monkeys. Another complaint was that the games came out way too close to each other, as the 6 games were released from 2001 to 2006, and they also ripped off Pokemon by having different versions with the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th installment. First of all, I can see why Capcom would keep releasing these games. I mean, if they made so much money, and they are business first, then why not? It's also understandable why they ripped off Pokemon. I mean, it's probably the most widespread and popular RPG series of all time, and it was hitting its peak in the early 2000s. So if you're gonna make an RPG series and you want some money, then look no further than to rip off Pokemon. Since the Battle Network games in Japan only came out in a single version, it's easy to assume that Capcom saw the success of Pokemon having different versions and capitalized, which is their job as a business. I do agree that it is a pretty cheap tactic, as versions only have some basic differences, but not enough to merit buying both versions. And well, yes, all the games are pretty similar, but they have different features and distinct feels if you've actually played through them. Keep in mind that these games don't take too long to beat, and they are portable. It's a game that's meant to be easy to pick up and play without any commitments or a winding story to remember. And really, you don't even have to play them in chronological order, as there isn't any deep story or saga to follow. However, I can definitely see how people can say that these games are too close to each other, but you know, I don't think most reviewers gave the Battle Network series a chance. Battle Network got good reviews for the first installment, but the rest of the series was always burdened for being too much like its predecessors, according to critics, and I have a feeling they unfairly wrote off these games. Well, what was the problem with having the same type of gameplay before? They released 6 Mega Man games on the NES, and the gameplay didn't change much from game to game, only subtly. How about Pokemon? What, do they get better reviews just because they space out their games more, even if they're basically sending out the same game with the same premise every time? How about the Phoenix Wright trilogy? How about the recent installments in the Zelda series? The point is, if nothing's broken, you don't have to fix it. And although the Battle Network series wasn't as innovative or timeless as the franchises I mentioned, the rule still stands that if something keeps making money, then you keep it going. The point is, this series doesn't get enough respect. And yes, to a point it is Capcom's fault for being such media whores with their franchises. However, there's still a genuine effort and fun in these games. I'll be the first to say they aren't masterpieces, and they do have some pretty annoying flaws that make them just about average, if not a little better. They'll never win any best of awards, and what I might say might get me criticized, but I stand by it. The Mega Man Battle Network series is not spectacular, but these are good games and just a lot of fun. They carry the elements from the previous incarnations of Mega Man, and captures a lot of the charm in its simplicity, and has a pretty kick-ass battle system to boot. These are light RPGs that don't have much going for them, but if you're in the mood for some good RPG action and not too much commitment, then give these games a shot. Being GBA games, they're pretty cheap and easy to find on eBay. Anyway, thanks for listening to all this, but I gotta start working on my next review for Valentine's Day. Oh, another year where I'm reminded of my eternal loneliness. Well anyway, I'm John Tickles, and I look forward to our next random encounter.